Hello and welcome back to the Lenko Show. I am your host, Alex Lankowski, and today I'm sitting down with a very good friend of mine, teammate Luke Neal, that ADHD guy. So I'm going to be digging into why Luke is becoming an ADHD coach and how he's benefited from it in the past himself, how he's found it useful, and what his experience with it is like. And then he's also dug up a few other things which are going to be incredibly useful. And I'm hoping I'm just going to be able to sit back, listen, and learn a little bit. And you won't have to listen to me all the way through the episode today. I'm going to try and just keep my mouth shut, let Luke talk, and see what we can pick out, see what we can dig into, get stuck into. So it promises to be a very juicy, interesting episode. And I hope you are sitting comfortably. Hope you're ready to enjoy and listen in. Let's get on with it. Right then, Luke, welcome to the show. Episode number 75 for you, my man. 25 away from the full century. How's
Oh,
things?
it's good. It's good. You're creeping up on becoming, based on statistics, I think you're in the top 1% of podcasters on with your 75 podcasting streak.
Yeah,
So congratulations.
I don't think Joe Rogan will be shaking in his boots just yet.
No, not yet, but maybe in a few years. Well, you're popping my podcast virginity, so thank you for the invite.
No, it's been a pleasure. It'd be a pleasure. I'm looking forward to this. Although I am kind of concerned because every time we actually seem to sit down and chat, it goes from just being a 15-minute quick catch up conversation to like 3 hours later, we'll both sit there straining, trying to hold on for a piss. So,
We are very good at putting the world to rights, I must agree.
yeah. So, like we've got you on specifically today to talk about your recent venture. I think you're taking a few pretty big steps and
Yeah, pretty
the
big.
a few changes with your own personal work situation and committing to going down a route of coaching, helping people with ADHD and becoming an is it a or an a, a an ADHD coach.
Yes, there we go.
Completely fucked that up. Becoming an ADHD coach and ultimately helping other people through it. So, what is it that you're doing? What brought that on? Talk us through it.
Um, so yeah, we'll give like a quick overview. I was diagnosed at age 6 with ADHD. My mum said she always knew there was something wrong with me. Like I didn't stop moving in her stomach, and when I was born, I was 6 weeks premature, put in an incubator, and obviously had various tubes in me, keeping me alive. And at hours old, I was ripping these tubes out of me, still wouldn't sit still, even as a baby that was on the brink of potential death. So the earliest age that you can get diagnosed at, I was. Um, did the typical school thing. I didn't really understand a lot about ADHD, as most people do. You learn the acronym, you think, oh, he's hyperactive and he's easily distracted, which I took with me through school, and I was like, fine, there's nothing else that affects me. I'm just a bit hyperactive and I get distracted easily. Went for university, did the whole school thing, and then I worked in a fairly large FTFSE 100 company, and I was there for 2 years until the end of August 2023. I was made redundant. Um, Came as a bit of a shock, but I was definitely getting to the end of my wick with the kind of corporate world. I kind of realized that no matter how hard I worked, I was never going to get the satisfaction monetarily or personally that I wanted from a job. So it's a bit of a blessing. The kind of cliche that everyone says is, "Oh, I lost my job and it was the best thing that ever happened to me." But hopefully, that is the case right now. Um, and I kind of just fell into ADHD coaching. I'd seen people on LinkedIn that were doing bits, um, doing like public speaking. And then one person I followed was like, "Oh, I'm going to be an ADHD coach," and I was like, "What the fuck is that?" Because I'd never heard of it. I'd never had any coaching or real support for my condition outside of medication. So I had a bit of money from my thing, and I was like, typical ADHD, impulsive, doesn't think things through, doesn't really plan. I was like, I need to do something, or else I'm just going to sit here and be a bum. So I spent basically all the money I had and hopped on this course. and it's turned out pretty good. Essentially, you just ADHD coaching is as wishy-washy as any life coaching sounds. We're there to kind of help people achieve the goals in life that they have. People with accountability, people with ADHD, it's diagnosed by a underdevelopment of the prefrontal cortex. That leads to a 30% discrepancy in your executive functioning skills. So executive function kind of covers decision making, problem solving, memory, emotional regulation, and a myriad of other things. So we just help people with that, like setting goals, achieving them, and keeping that accountability.
And when you say like it's essentially diagnosed by an underdevelopment of the prefrontal cortex, because this what I always wonder about ADHD and ADD in terms of whenever anyone describes it to me, I always sit there and I think, well, it sounds like me. It just sounds like to me, honestly, in a weird way, it just sounds fucking normal. And like from meeting you, from knowing you, from playing, being your teammate for quite a long time and just being mates, I'm like, I wouldn't know, I wouldn't give a shit. It wouldn't necessarily change the way that I'd see you or treat you or anything like that. So I suppose in my own ignorance, I kind of get stuck at the point of like, well, what the fuck actually is it?
It's funny you say that because you might have ADHD. So statistics show that people with ADHD are 300% more likely to start their own business than a neurotypical person. A lot of my friends have, like, since I've started this, have like self-diagnosed themselves and done the online tests. And they're like, my girlfriend's like, you're diagnosing everyone. I was like, well, that's because probably most of my friends probably have ADHD. Like, there's a reason we get on. There's a reason we're always late. There's a reason we're really bad at putting plans together. But when we're around each other, we don't need to have that plan. We don't need to have that structure because we'll just bounce off each other and we'll go on forever. So I'm not going to diagnose you, but you may have that because we can both just go on and talk for hours and the subject will just change constantly. But we'll both be on the same page. Whereas most people are like, wait, you started talking about this, now you're here. How did you get there? Where with a lot of the time when I'm with someone with ADHD, the conversation can just go on and it'll go anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, my only diagnosis that I have at the minute is that I'm an American football kicker, which puts me in a whole different category. It just generally means egotism.
Yeah, I don't think there's not enough a piece of paper long enough to kind of to write all the conditions down, is there?
No. So is there actually a structural difference in the brain? Is it like you say, it's development? Is there something like physically different about the brain of someone with ADHD from birth, from that initial development, or is it something that becomes more apparent and adapts and evolves over time?
So there's two ways of thinking about this. Initially, people thought that it was completely hereditary, but they couldn't quite find the evidence for it because I don't think they know what gene it is on. I haven't read into this very much, but it is definitely hereditary. It does get passed down through the genes. But it can also be environmental, which I didn't understand initially. So, which is partly why people think that people are getting it more as adults and it's being more diagnosed. The caveat to that is that you couldn't be diagnosed with ADHD as an adult until 2008. So up until 2008, the NHS did not recognize ADHD as a condition that adults could have. You grew out of it, which you don't. You kind of just get used to not being physically hyper.
Yeah.
So I still mess around, but I can kind of, as you get older, you just have a lot less energy. So
you become more, should we say, you become more mature and able to manage yourself?
Yes and no. I think, do you move around as much as you did when you were 6?
Oh, I'm a fucking dick, mate. Honestly, like, just I'll have to sit you down with Fiona. I should get her in on this podcast with you because she'll be able to give.
Well, maybe we're missing the diagnosis here, then, Lenny.
Well, I'll have to get her in to just sit and listen to this, and she can just advise on the way that I behave.
Yeah, but the way it's diagnosed is for children, they will observe you playing with people. I had a look, and mine was the Connor scale. But generally, they kind of look for inattention, your ability to focus on tasks and switch tasks, your ability to pay attention to things that you're not interested in. Yeah, but with adults, to go back to the how it can be done, core environmentally, the link between the underdevelopment of the prefrontal cortex is how they think people get ADHD that haven't got it genetically. So if you go through childhood trauma, your upbringing isn't very good. Some scientists link it to the lack of social interaction, i.e., in schools, we're not having rough and tumble play, we're not moving around as much. We're making less decisions and having less consequences because as children, our parents say, no, don't do that, don't touch this. And when you go to school, you're told and given like a regiment of how you should do things rather than kind of making those decisions yourself, which some people theorize prevents the brain from growing. But it's not like a permanent thing. It's in theory a delay. So there's a 30% delay in the development of that part of the brain. But the one thing that is completely solid is the regulation of dopamine. So dopamine is one of the largest regulators of our mood and our attention. It kind of falls under the same bracket of serotonin. But people with ADHD cannot regulate the dopamine. We really struggle to produce it. And nervous people say that we have an interest-based nervous system. Whereas most people will see a deadline and say that's important. Look at a bill, say it's a bill, it's important, and it's got a deadline. And if I don't do it, something bad will happen. Whereas people with ADHD look at it and like, that doesn't look fun. I don't want to do it right now. And the body doesn't produce the relevant chemicals in order for you to focus and motivate yourself to do it. But the caveat to that is we're motivated by pressure. So if things are about to be late or something's going to go bad initially, we'll then suddenly focus. But 9 times out of 10, it's too late.
Yeah, that's literally me. I do that shit all the time. Honestly, I do that stuff all the time. There's a couple
that
of
might be why you think it's normal.
Yeah.
But don't feel bad. Like my theory is that like 50% of people on the planet have kind of had it at some point. Kind of going back to hunter gatherers. Like some people attribute to like everyone's either ADHD or autistic. You've got the gatherers that really need calmness, they need order, they need structure. They gather berries, they get water, they do it periodically. They need to do it at this time,
Typically,
this place.
Women.
Yeah.
Fair to say.
Yeah, that is fair. But that is probably more like a social thing rather than neurological and physiological. They're not physically prepared to.
So just dipping into that. So you mentioned about like it being hereditary and being passed on, and like you can pass on behaviors through genetics. Look at it in, dogs, for example. If you get a working line dog, it passes down working line type behaviors, the drive, the energy, the general demeanor gets passed on through parents. And I think it'd be naive to think that the same sort of thing didn't happen in human society. And in terms of female brain structure, that is typically different from an evolutionary standpoint to what a male brain would certainly be.
Yeah.
Then obviously we then do have the social factors creeping into play now as well, which is obviously a massive factor of like, we have to have equality of outcome on every fucking level.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a difficult one. We could upset a lot of people going down it. But back to the kind of hunter-gatherer thing, the whole thing with ADHD is that we don't focus on things that aren't important. But we can focus intently for hours, kind of thing, to the point where we forget that we're hungry, we forget how we're feeling. We don't need to think about eating or drinking or going to the toilet, like we've both said, we talk for 3 hours when we're super focused on something. It all leads back to think about your hunting. You've found a deer, you need to follow it for 6 hours until it gets physically exhausted. Most people won't be able to focus on one thing 6 hours. Like I can't focus on something I don't want to do for 5 minutes. But if I started fixing my car before I'd got my license, I started changing the bulbs, putting LEDs on it. It was a 2001 car. It then led to servicing it, pretty standard. Then I found some rust. What do most people do? Take it to a garage, ignore it, check whether it needs to be fixed or not. I taught myself to weld. I bought a welder, got some steel, watched some YouTube videos, taught myself how to weld, found more rust, found more holes, attacked them. Then I had holes in my car with just bare metal. So I taught myself to sand, paint, prime, all this. I probably spent the equivalent amount. The car was only worth 600 quid, but I put hours into it. But this was obviously during lockdown, and I was working at one of the testing labs. So I had full days off where I could think. I didn't have a list of tasks to do. I just had one thing that I had to need to focus on. And I could focus on it all day. And then it hit dinner time. I'd be like, oh, I should probably eat by that now. But we can just jump down rabbit holes and absorb a lot of knowledge because we're curious and distractible. There's some people theorize that people with ADHD are more intelligent. There's no link between ADHD and intelligence. The thing that I would say makes people with ADHD seem more intelligent is because we're so distractible. When we get on the internet or have a book, we'll go down rabbit holes and learn random things. I was on YouTube once looking at Soviet era submarines and like the world's biggest one or something like that. So like we're great at like pub quizzes because we have such random general knowledge. But there is technically no link between intelligence and ADHD. You can be really intelligent, you can have average intelligence, you can have below average intelligence for ADHD. It's just the wiring of your brain that's completely different to the average person.
I just feel like you're describing me in more and more detail the more we get through this. The other thing that you mentioned was so like in school, and it's quite interesting as well. Like you were mentioning about the rough and tumble playing, being able to play and be free and burn off energy in a sense. And it's the same thing that I heard. I was actually watching a YouTube video with Jordan Peterson talking about this, and he was saying the same thing. It's like you've got, I mean, I would say typically troublemakers in school. And even if we go back to like my school days, like I was actually a really good kid. If anything, my ADHD's got worse if I have got ADHD. Like I've devolved. I've reduced my capabilities as a human, and I've just got worse and worse and more insufferable as I've got older. But I think back to like the kids that were poorly behaved in school, like when you think back to what you do in school, like you taught, like you sit down at a desk, you sit in a row, you sit on this table, like you have to do this, you have to behave in this manner, you have to sit like this, you have to stand
in silence without moving.
Exactly, in silence without moving. And then you get like short bursts through the day, like 15 minutes 2 times a day, and then like
where
45
you need to also
minutes
eat.
Yeah, and 45 minutes to an hour at lunchtime. And then the rest of the time you're expected to sit down and learn stuff that you're not particularly interested in. And like for me, I don't see how it's a realistic expectation to sit down, to get anyone to sit down and force them to learn, or essentially expect them to learn, not even to force them, but just to expect them to learn about things that they simply aren't interested in.
Yeah, completely agree. Like there's many things wrong with this country. The school system's one. They've obviously tried to make it so it covers all bases, or it's a one size fits all, but it's kind of turned into a one size fits none.
Yeah.
But it's because I'm on the side of people should be more understanding about ADHD and other disabilities, but I also stand at like we should be able to be ignorant. People shouldn't have to walk on eggshells because that way you don't learn. You need to be able to be ignorant of people's illnesses, the troubles that they're having in life. You can't be expected to know all of that stuff. Like teachers have a hard enough job already, but is that because the kids and the structure isn't suited, so kids misbehave? Maybe. Is it because the teachers are overworked and they can't give the proper attention? Maybe. It's a myriad of things, and someone that's far smarter than me will have to fix the school system. But yeah, it's not really working. But it it works for the government. We're in a capitalist society now, and that's like if we go back pre-industrial evolution, everyone would have done something with their hands and for a job. No one would have been sat down all day. People would have been constantly moving, constantly producing dopamine. So, which is why people think that like ADHD is made up to a certain degree. But it's if people find the cure for ADHD, which is a lot of it is dopamine, naturally, then there's no condition. One of the best things for dopamine production is exercise. That's why I train first thing in the morning. If I don't train, I'm so much less clear. I have a lot less clarity in my thought. My decision making is a lot worse. And it's usually because and if I don't go to the gym, I'll distract myself all day.
Mm.
I'll sit and scroll for hours, which I've spoken to you many times. This Monday I had a bad day. Woke up, went on my phone to check the workout, reply to my missus. Then I'll go on Instagram, see if anyone's messaged me. Next thing I know, I'm scrolling. And I look at the time and I'm like, oh, it's 6:30. I usually get to the gym for 6. It's all right. I'll go at 7, keep going. It's 11. I'm like, fuck. And then I'm like, oh, there's no point now. So then you just keep going. I think I got off my phone at 3 o'clock because it was about to die. And I was like, okay, I should probably eat and get some sunlight. But that's one of the bad parts of it. But then the next day I'm like, oh, that was shit, but now we're going to be productive. And I did all the shit I needed to do on Monday and everything I needed to do on Tuesday in the first 4 hours of my day. Because the pressure was applied, because I'd gotten absolutely nothing done the first day. And I'm like, shit, even though I did cancel on the first podcast, I'm sorry. But it's better now.
Yeah,
it affects a lot of people in different ways.
Yeah, and just going back to the school stuff, because obviously those early phases of development are pretty crucial in so many different aspects. And like this is where responsibility of parenting comes in. And I think I saw something about the Labour government wanted to introduce mandatory teeth brushing for 3 to 5 year olds in primary school, which Fiona was so irritated by that. She's like, when am I supposed to do that? Like, as if we haven't.
So what? The teachers got to brush their teeth?
Oh, like the teachers have to teach the kids to brush their teeth, and I just said, like, how is that just not responsibility for the parents? Like, it makes zero fucking sense. And I was actually speaking with. So there's a couple of things actually. Like, I'm just going to dump on you here. I was actually speaking with one of my clients the other day, and she was saying about, she's a priest, vicar. She's a priest. And she was saying about how like family structures have changed. And obviously like there's a lot more women are now working so like high power jobs, and a lot of women are working full time, simply not just because they want to, but also because they have to. And
there's no such thing as a single income family anymore. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And like childcare is essentially being forced onto other people, whether it's, you know, like nursery, play school, or another company, or it's private childcare, and it's not necessarily being given to the responsibility of the grandparents. And then you think, well, you know, if you've got a stressed out parent that's got a kid that doesn't really understand how to parent other than their experience of being parented, like in a normal environment previously, that would have been the family structure would have been parents have a kid, grandparents are heavily involved, and essentially raise the child because they've got excessive amounts of time to do so. They also have the experience, the ability, the knowledge, the know-how, and the intricacies, and they're all very calm. Whereas if you take that out of the picture and you put it onto someone who's a new parent, highly stressed, very irritated, and then the external pressures of society, they're anxious and like on edge all the time. And then we wonder why we've got all these anxious on edge kids. Like they essentially learn to behave like that, and as if that becomes normal. And then obviously that's going to have a massive knock-on effect going through. But then the other thing that you mentioned about like the schooling system, I was listening to someone on the radio the other day, and they were talking about like someone that runs a project where it's like out of hours after school stuff. And you're talking about these kids that can come in and they can work on a project, any project that they are fascinated in, and they can do it. Like if they want to build something, if they want to get the materials to do it, if they want to develop a website, if they want to essentially work on their own personalized projects and ultimately, realistically, the start of their own business, or it could be. And you just think, well, that is a much more productive way for someone to spend their time, other than just being labeled a troublemaker because they don't sit down and conform. I mean, that is not at all now. Like you would have a hard time trying to get me to sit down and conform to anything.
Yeah. Yeah. As soon as someone tells me to do something, even if I'm planning on doing it, I won't do it.
Yeah, I'll be like, I'm going to do it on my own terms. I'm not going to do it because you told me to.
Yeah. Like if I start cleaning my room and someone's like, "Oh no, don't do it like that," and I'm like, I'll instantly just lose all the motivation to do it.
Yeah.
That's another ADHD trait kind of thing. Like, but similar. It's kind of similar to a lot of things. Like there's an article that we were talking about that says like you can't give anyone advice because that would be advice based on my experiences and my life. Your motivations to things, whether it's cleaning, starting a business, doing any job, meeting someone, forming a relationship, it has to come from yourself. You can't have external motivation in terms of someone else wants you to do it, because then it will fall flat on its ass.
Yeah. I think I don't know if you've kind of found this obviously with me kind of coaching you. I very much try and avoid the words of what you should do is that, and then whatever it is. Like I would always like, because I get these questions all the time of like, oh, like what do you think? What do you think I should do? Well, what should I do about so and so? And I'm like, well, if I was in your situation, what I would do, or what I think might be a good idea to do if it was me, would be Z, or what I have done in the past. And you're basically talking from your own experiences. And the idea then is to just give options and just give ideas, give suggestions. And that tends to be, ultimately, it's just a little nudge down the path just to get a bit of guidance.
Is.
Even
I don't know if it's an accurate stat, but I say 95% of advice giving is not taken.
Yeah, I'd go with that. I'd probably say 99%. 99.5% if I was to go through the coaching I've done. Just go like it's remarkable. Like when you say something a few months like ahead of time, and then they go, okay, yeah, I hear you. And they don't listen and they do something else. They do their own way, do it their own way. And they go, do you know what? You were right. I should have just listened to you in the first place. And you go, well, maybe I'll stop telling you the right thing to do and just give you a complete bosh in the other direction and let you go stupid.
Well, that's what we've been told with coaching. Obviously, we're coaches. We're not consultants. Consultants tell you what to do, then you ignore your consultant, you don't do it. We're not therapists. We don't tell you how to feel. The idea is that we help you figure out the answers to your problems. Because if I tell you how I did, how it worked for me, then you will try and do that. Probably won't work for you because you're not me. You've not had my experiences. You don't have my skills. Then you'll be demotivated because something that worked for someone else didn't work for you. And you're like, well, I'm hopeless. Whereas if you kind of have the idea yourself, it's self-manufactured. You know how you do it based on your lifestyle, the kind of skills that you've got and the systems that you've already got in place, then you're a lot more likely to succeed. It's like you write me a program, never having looked at my gym, and then me be like, well, all I've got is a kettlebell and you want me to do GHDs and sled pulls, and the closest thing I've got to that is a piece of string, like, and a kettlebell. Like you kind of there needs to be context and people need to know what they're dealing with, what their skills are in order to accomplish something. But like in terms of our working, I just like to take the mental load of thinking what I need to do. That's like the best thing about coaching for me. One, you keep me accountable because if I don't turn up to work out, then I'm like, well, I'm paying Lenny a lot of money. So like every workout I miss is like an X pounds amount. So I'm like, well, fuck, that's a lot. Two, like you've written it, you put effort in, and I don't want to wind you up and devalue what you're doing for me. And two, I don't need to think about what needs to get to the gym. I've now got into a habit of not even checking my workout until I'm in the gym, because if I've got it and I look at it, it's a hard workout, then I'll be fucking pissed off before I get into the gym, and I'll waste more time leaving the house. So now I look at it when I get there and I'm like, okay, it's fine. We're doing this. Then we'll do that. And I don't need to think about it. Otherwise, I'll just leave early.
I'm going to put something horrific in for you for tomorrow then.
It's fine. I might give myself a rest day.
So what I wanted to do actually, like, because obviously we spoke a little bit about school a few moments ago as well. I'm
Hmm.
interested in what was your experience in going through school as a kid growing up? Because obviously you had quite an early diagnosis. Were there any
Hmm.
provisions put in place? And then what was the general day to day? And how did you get on in school overall, like through primary school and high school?
Um, Off the top of my head, no provisions. There was obviously offers like, oh, you can have the special needs teacher with you. Like, I wasn't special needs. I didn't need help understanding it. I've always been bright. I've always been pretty smart. Um, a classic underachiever. It's like, oh, if Luke's worked hard or Luke applied himself or Luke spoke less or Luke was less distractible, he'd do really well. But like, I got all the grades I needed. So I was always in the top band, if not the top set. I was either in set one or set three. When I went into secondary school, I was in set one for everything and then moved down to set three for some things because they didn't interest me. Like science, maths, I was always set one. English, which I never liked because I've got poor task initiation and I was probably never told I was good at it. So I always thought whatever I do would be bad so that I'm whenever I start a task on something I think I'm not good at, I'm automatically not going to be good at it because of a thing that people with ADHD experience called rejection sensitive dysphoria due to the our inability to kind of regulate our emotions. It's not that we don't have emotions. We either feel extreme emotion or we're kind of very cold. My girlfriend says I don't have a heart sometimes, but I think it's more of a case I'm very inconsistent with levels of emotion.
I've had that as well. Not not from Fiona. She gets the care inside. There's plenty
Yeah.
of other people that have been like, "Oh, you haven't got a heart. You're cruel. You're mean. Just
Are
be."
they clients by any chance?
Yeah, clients, like just general people. Sometimes people on social media. Yeah,
Maybe you're getting a bit of compassion fatigue.
what's that?
Where you're just tired of caring about everyone else all the time. You're just being so nice and accommodating other people and listening to their troubles and their bullshit that you're like, I don't give a fuck anymore.
But this is
Um,
this is where I then question, like, do I give a fuck? Like, do I give a fuck in the first place? Because so, like, here's right. This is me being 100% honest, right? So anyone can come to me with like the biggest tragedy in the world, and they can like I've had one of my clients has come into the gym and told me that like her daughter has hung herself,
but
and I'm like, right. I the thing is,
yeah,
like,
there's not a lot you can say to that, really. But
I
also, you've
I'm
never been in that position, so
no,
how can you have an emotional reaction?
yeah, like I don't want to say that I don't care because I don't think that's necessarily true. But do I feel the emotional impact from that? I don't think I do. I know people who, other trainers who are, again, great trainers who, if you were to put them in the same situation, would quite possibly get on the same emotional level as the
Mm-hmm.
client that's coming to the gym with those kind of issues. And for whatever, like, I don't seem to be able to, I don't seem to take it home with me. It doesn't seem to worry me. It doesn't seem to
Mm-hmm.
play on my mind. Like when I do think about it, I think, fuck, man, like that's fucking tragic. Like I need to be able to help this person, and
Yeah.
they'll be very high up on my priority list to make sure I'm actually checking in, looking after him. But
Mm-hmm.
do I feel the emotional hurt? I don't think so.
Yeah. I can agree with that a lot of the time. I do try and put myself in other people's positions. It's like, oh, I can imagine how that feels, but in terms of like, I don't know, when your heart drops, like you physically feel it, like you feel that physiological like sinking into your stomach, like your heart rate slows or things like that. When something you personally something really bad happened to you. I've
Mm.
never kind of felt that for other people.
Yeah.
Like I feel bad and I know how I should act and how supportive I should be. But for a lot of things, unless they're a close friend of mine, it doesn't affect me and I can't register it because as much as I want to care, if I put energy into something like that I can't control, like I can't help them with that. I've never experienced it. I wouldn't know how it feels. I wouldn't know how I'd want someone to approach me if that had happened. So maybe it is that. If we were going to diagnose you with ADHD, there's obviously reasons that people with ADHD struggle with that. And you can then link it back to kind of the hunter-gatherer thing, whereas if you're going into wars, which hunter-gatherers are, they're reactive, they're there for crises, you wouldn't want them to kind of have that real emotional connection. You wouldn't want them to have minds and memories that would latch on to traumatic things. Like, I'm sure there's loads of traumatic events that have happened to me, and I've probably created coping mechanisms, but I couldn't tell you something that really traumatized me. Like, if I went to therapy, I couldn't tell them, like, it was on this day, this time, this hour that this thing happened, which is why I do this. I'm sure I've got loads of coping mechanisms, things that did happen, but I couldn't place them. Like, I've got an excellent short-term memory, but I'm pretty sure like my brain pushes out negative thoughts a lot of the time. But that's the same for a lot of human things. Like childbirth. Most people, and they say like hindsight is 2020. Most people get more acclimated to things that have happened negatively in the past the more time happens. But yeah, but going back to ADHD, emotional regulation is something we struggle with, and we struggle with self-awareness. So being aware of our bodies and experiences and how certain things affect us. Like, my nan passed away, and I didn't cry. I didn't really miss her. People with ADHD have like a physical out of sight, out of mind. Like, if I don't see you and like you're not on my knees, I won't think about you.
Do you know what? I have the same. I'm exactly the same. Oh,
maybe we need to get you a doctor's appointment, Lenny. When I was at uni, the only thing I missed was my dogs. I didn't miss my family. I didn't miss my girlfriend. I miss my dogs because dogs are kind of there and they give you instant satisfaction, I think. Like, no matter how shit your day is, dogs are never really having a bad day, and they're always there like, hi, I love you. Which is probably why you get on with your dog better than anyone.
That is true. That is true. I would miss him. But I'm trying to see. He's for those people who are watching this on YouTube, where that purple blanket is just over my left arm there, his head is buried on the other side of that. He's just chilling.
If we give him a shout, will he pop his head up?
Should we try it? Axe. Hey, bud.
Oh, look at
boy. There he is. What a boy.
The absolute unit.
Yeah. No, I would seriously miss him if I had to go without him for a period of time. But I would equally miss Fiona as well. Like, she's fantastic to be around. She'll never listen to this. It's fine. I can say these things. Anyway, we were talking about.
We really love you, and we wouldn't know what we'd do without you.
No, I wouldn't know what I'd do without
her. Same.
I'd just have
me and Eleanor.
Yeah, I'm not going to go into that. That's a private relationship stuff, but you can imagine. We were talking about you in school. So like, we got a massive segue there, but
yeah.
What was that like? Were there any things that you really struggled with? Was there anything?
It's one of them things. Like, it just seems second nature to me. But looking back now, there's lots of times where I've been in a social situation, and rather than like thinking on my own, I just match other people. Looking back now, like, there are a lot of situations where sometimes I'm in a social situation, I'll just have a quiet moment and get a bit of clarity and be like, I probably don't really care or want to be here. And then I'll jump back in and start laughing and joking. That's more nowadays that I'm kind of aware of it. But at school, not really. Like, I kind of was in with the football lads for most of it. And then I kind of got bored of the dick measuring contest constantly. So I found like a group of friends that would just chill out and not necessarily play football at lunch. But I was all right. I was just a classic underachiever. I always had pretty good friendship groups. I think the one thing that did affect me is that I felt left out quite a lot. I would never be like invited to things first off. But a lot of that's because I didn't initiate conversations with people. I'd wait for them to talk to me. Yeah, I was always my mate's plus one. But like, when I got there, everyone was like, oh yeah, they get on with me. But they're like, oh, well, I never talked to you. And I was like, well, why would I? What are we going to talk about? Like, I can talk to you in person now.
I have those exact same thoughts. And I really, really struggle to actually speak to people and get to know them in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Unless I'm in person, then we'll talk. If we get on and I want to understand you, I'll talk to you for hours. Like there's times where I've like spoken to people, like just met things, and like my missus will think I fancy them, and I'm like, oh no, we were just chatting shit. Chances are we'll probably start talking about ADHD, and they think they've also got it too. But you'll just get like you can hyper focus on an individual and want to learn more about them as you can hyper focus on any topic. But yeah, that's what I've found out, especially at like secondary school. University was fine. They're a lot more accepting at university, and the way things are marked at university is probably better targeted towards people with ADHD because the way I understand things are a lot different to other people a lot of the time. But at university, they praise your understanding and application of a theory. I did chemistry, so at like A level for chemistry and biology, they want you to write a specific statement and they'll tick you based on what words you use. Whereas at university, they mark you based on your application of the theory. So there'll be a specific theory where if the atomic number is higher, it will have a higher or lower boiling point, for example, rather than you stating, oh, this element has a high boiling point, this element has a low boiling point. I would say the theory. Elements that have a higher weight will have a higher boiling point due to X, Y, Z and the forces involved. At university, I'm like, okay, he understands the theory, he's given examples, that's fine. But at A level, it's like, he didn't say this word or this word, so he doesn't get the mark. So I did awful at A level. Fortunately, I got an unconditional. And then went on to university, did really well my first year, awful in my second year because I stopped focusing on it, started playing American football, and that was basically the only thing I cared about. And I think I just wasn't studying enough. I hadn't had a medication review since I was 16, and I was probably 20 or 21 at that time, and about 30 kilos heavier. So whether the dilution of it in my blood was having an effect on things. So I had my medication increased. Third year, I got the award for most improved student, brought my grade up from a 2.2 to a 2.1. And then, because I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, I signed up to doing the grade masters. Then, obviously, I think a lot of people struggle when they get to uni because the routine that you have at school is now gone, especially if you do a subject that's a lot lighter on hours, like history or English or things like that, where you've got like 4 hours a day. Fortunately, I was in uni every day at 9 o'clock because I did chemistry. So that kind of kept me in the routine of doing things. Whereas in my final year, it relaxed a little bit and I was able to kind of like, I got into a bad habit of doing nothing and just laying in bed and wasting my time. And then that perpetuated into obviously feeling down and talking negatively to yourself. And then I was like, oh, fuck, am I depressed? So I went to the doctor and was like, I'm feeling like this, like I don't get out of bed, this, that, and the other. But I've since then realized as I've learned more and more about ADHD, I was lacking dopamine because when I woke up, I did nothing. And then I did tasks or things that were instant gratification, but very small hits. So I had to continue doing them, continue watching little videos, continue scrolling, but never actually achieve anything that was actually of any gratification. The second half of the year, I had lab projects that I needed to be in for every day. And I sorted my routine out. I was up at 6, which is far earlier than anyone at university ever gets up. I still tried to go out on nights out. I'd leave at 1 o'clock in the morning or have a drink, leave, go home early to make sure I went up, got up at 6 and went to the gym. And like my productivity, my mentality and outlook on things changed drastically. And I was like, yeah, I'm definitely not depressed because like it doesn't last for long periods. If I'd have a good day the next day and sort myself out, I was fine. But yeah, that's the only time I've ever kind of like battled true mental health. And it was largely all down to my ADHD, but I just wasn't aware at the time.
So what would your advice be for someone that you think is like for someone who is potentially struggling and they need to get on top of it and they think they might have ADHD, like that might be the cause of
talk to your GP, do an online test if you want to see if you've got it.
Where can they go to do the online test?
If you search ADHD test Online, there's loads of them. Some of them will give you ones that are specifically based. If we open this up quickly, let's have a look at the ones that I've sent my friends to. But in the last week, 4 of my friends have done a test and come back positive as ADHD.
Is this like everyone? Is it like 100% success rate of everyone that's gone and done the test? They've got ADHD.
No. One of my friends, Keanu, who some people know if they follow American football, we got him to do it, and he wasn't. So he got a really low score. We was trying to say that he was a bit autistic as a joke, but he got the lowest score of the 3 of us out of our little friendship group. But yeah, I've had several people reach out to me and say like, I think I've got it. And like the stigma that people say is because everyone thinks they've got it nowadays. And, more than half people have got it, so it can't really be a disease. Which is where the kind of fact that if there was already a large population of like indigenous people that had this kind of mindset and this brain wiring, then it makes complete sense that nearly half the people I know have got it. But also, I get on with them, which makes them more likely to have it because we understand each other and we're like forgiving, and we have that lived experience of forgetting everything, being really bad at talking over the thing. Like these aren't normal human behaviors. Humans didn't communicate over the phone without seeing each other constantly. If you go back 100 years, you'd have to wait 2 weeks for a letter, or you'd meet in person. So I think this is something that people with ADHD struggle with. But going back to the help, yeah. Identify whether you think you've got it. There's lots of resources out there. You can check me out on that ADHD guy on Instagram and on TikTok. I'll be creating a lot of videos to help you specifically in the UK because there's a lot more support for it. If you're at university, speak to your students' union. There'll be tests that they can do with you, and then you can get disabled students allowance. That will give you more time in exams. It will give you reasonable adjustments, such as like agendas ahead of time, extra time in exams. It can pay for software to help keep you organized. It also helps fund laptops, other things. If you're an adult, you can get access to work, which will pay for similar things, but you need to go through your GP. They will ask you a few questions, ascertain whether it's worth you moving forward to the diagnosis process with a consultant. At the minute in the UK, the wait time is up to 7 years in some parts. So the date between your GP saying, yeah, I think it's worth you getting checked out, and the day of you getting your final decision is sometimes 7 years. Not even your final decision, but just starting your consultancy.
And this is where it's important to get a coach, and this is where you step into the picture, right? Because
it certainly is.
Realistically, you can't wait 7 years to get a diagnosis to be able to then crack on and start your life. And is it something that you can manage through being coached without necessarily having the medication and everything prescribed to you, and without having the diagnosis? Is it able to still function and operate to a higher?
Certainly. Well, if we take you, based on what you've said to me, there's a large chance you might have ADHD. Someone else who's big in the fitness industry, James Smith PT, he's recently been diagnosed with it. He's a multi-millionaire. He's got 1 million followers. He's written 2 best-selling books. And he was diagnosed last year after the books, and he's not medicated.
You don't need to make me feel like that, all right? You don't need to do that. There's no need for that.
Just fine. Your population is a lot smaller. You work with athletes. 1 in 100 people are athletes, if that, 1 in 1,000. So basically, as long as you've got 100 followers, you probably have a larger market share than a lot of people. We'll go with that. But yeah, you can. It just makes it easier. Medication is not the answer to fixing ADHD. It's the skills that we teach you, or you potentially taught yourself. A lot of people will have coping mechanisms and a support system. Like a lot of people outsource admin, so they don't have to think about it. I'm sure you have some kind of assistant that will help you organize yourself, whether it's a virtual assistant or a system that kind of takes away tasks that you don't need to do or don't need to worry about. But yeah, it's skills, not pills. Like ADHD medication helps a lot. It can help you focus, but it doesn't tell you what to focus on.
Yep.
It doesn't help you pick the right things to focus on. It allows you to they say it gives you glasses. It allows you to see all of the things that are going wrong. It allows you to see all of those piles of washing and ironing that you've not put away, those glasses that you've left in your room that you keep forgetting to take downstairs. But it doesn't tell you how to kind of fix those things.
Yeah.
So that's where, coaching definitely comes in and definitely helps a lot. A lot of the time, it's just a bit of accountability, someone to take that cognitive load away from you. You'll find like a problem shared is a problem halved. And it's similar to therapy. Once you've kind of verbalized something and got the ideas out of your head and like eliminated that decision process of, am I thinking this is right? Am I stupid? You'll stop ruminating. And once you verbalize something, you kind of make an active decision on where you stand on a subject. Like you can form opinions in your brain as much as you like, but once you say it's out there, like you've formed that opinion, and as far as you're concerned, it's happening. Whereas I can think, I could go to the gym today, or I could stay at home and relax. And then once you say it, you tell someone, I'm going to the gym today, your brain's already halfway there. It's out in the universe. Like you kind of need to do it. So it definitely helps. It's just like talking to a friend. I think a lot of people are too busy in their own worlds nowadays because the world we live in, everyone's trying to achieve these big goals and having to work 60-hour weeks and 60 grand and buy a house and have kids, that people don't spend time with each other in the week. Like you're lucky if you see your friends once a week. Whereas if you look back pre-industrial revolution, you'd be seeing your friends every day. You'd probably be having dinner with them because you put all your money together and cook one meal and spend time with dozens of people in a day.
Yeah.
Whereas now people might interact with 1, 2, 3 people. If you're self-employed or work from home, you might not see another soul.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, a big downfall in modern life. And I think a lot of mental afflictions would be solved with greater human interaction.
Yeah. I think better level of community and, like you say, more interaction where you're actually able to help each other up as opposed to kind of fighting for your own and fending for yourself. I think you see it with people generally being quite selfish. Like even simple things like littering on the street and being able to hold, like if you've got a ragtag bunch of kids that need a kick up the arse, like vandalizing and abusing other people's property, whether it's spray painting, keying cars, like just acting like hooligans. Like there is no accountability. You cannot do anything to them.
But it all stems back to parenting because the parents aren't at home to discipline them because they're working too hard. And because the kids haven't got the attention and integration with their parents, like I'm in a generation, because I've spent a lot of time with my parents, they're the last person I want to disappoint because they're so ingrained into my psyche and potentially my reward system. What your parents praised you for, you want to keep doing. I'd imagine a long time ago, your dad praised you for doing sport, which ingrained into you that sport is good. And now whenever you do sport or you're exercise, you're active, you enjoy it. Whereas if you, like we've mentioned earlier, with the kind of the need for 2 incomes these days in order to live, kids aren't spending as much time with their parents and aren't getting their reward system based on what their parents want. And therefore, the consequences aren't based on what their parents say. Because if you don't respect your parents and don't want their approval, then why are you going to do what I tell you? You're just going to go and do whatever you want and wind other people up because winding other people up is quite funny.
I am afraid we are going to have to call it time there. Like I've still got like a full page of notes that I wanted to talk to you about, but we're just going to
Fine, we'll do another episode.
We're going to have to do another one, mate. We're just going to have to do another one.
Maybe once you've got your diagnosis.
It could, yeah. Well, what we could do actually is on the next one, you could actually run me through the questions and we could get me a live diagnosis right there and then.
Yeah, we could do. If you can focus. A few of my friends have said, it's too long. I don't want to answer 100 questions.
Oh, it's 100 questions?
Like, not like written ones. You pick very, like not very much. Yeah.
Oh,
the kind of standard ones.
Fucking hell.
All people
Okay.
with ADHD get really annoyed about it being so long, and they get really put off of having to do this unpleasant task.
It's a necessary evil. Right, just run
Yeah.
us through where people can find you. So Instagram, because and include
Instagram,
all the dots, all the underscores, like all of it.
that it is that A full stop D full stop H full stop D full stop guy. The same on Instagram, that ADHD guy with a full stop in between each letter of ADHD. I'm on LinkedIn at Luke Neal, and Euro players at Luke Neal. If you want to sign me as a professional American football player, I'm pretty good at that.
Thought you were.
The,
I thought you were coming up to Manchester for the weekends for next year.
if there's plenty of people that need coaching with ADHD in Manchester, I'll move up there.
Excellent. You can. Yeah, I've got a room for you. You can stay with us.
Maybe if not London, maybe I'll have to join the Warriors. But no, I'm
Yeah, don't do
going to
that.
rise again with the Phoenix. Hopefully, if not, I'll be in Europe. That's the idea.
Well, we'll talk about that privately when we get around to it.
Yes. Well, thanks for having me, and it's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure, mate. Thank you for coming on. And there we have it, ladies and gents. That concludes today's episode with Luke Neal. I've had to profusely apologize for cutting it short just because I am running very, very short on time, but I am definitely going to get him back on the show to talk through some more of this because we have a ton of other stuff that I wanted to go through and what I want to understand about ADHD from him. And we will keep checking in along with Luke throughout his ADHD coaching journey. So if you do want to learn more about it, make sure you go and check out his Instagram. Go and speak to him. He's a nice guy. He'll probably ignore you at first because that's one of his symptoms anyway. But yeah, make sure you go and engage with him. Go and follow some of his content and his information on Instagram and see if it's going to be useful to you. It'll, even if you haven't got ADHD, it is probably going to come across like there will be certain things that are very, very relevant, very, very apt and appropriate. And you'll think, oh, fucking hell, like I do that. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the episode and we look forward to having you listening in again soon. If you do enjoy the show, if you have enjoyed this episode, please make sure you go on to wherever you get your podcast, leave us a rating, leave us a review. That would be greatly appreciated. And if you could share it with anybody that you think would benefit from listening to the show as well, that would be absolutely awesome. I thank you for that. Anyway, between now and the next time we meet, take care of yourself. Lenko out.